Hi there fabric jugglers, it's Babs here from MyFieryPhoenix, and today is the second of our 5-day challenge, the 5 skirts in 5 days. Yesterday we constructed an A-line skirt, and today we will be working on a circle skirt. I've done it in satin just to make life really difficult for myself, and I'll show you how to create both a rolled hem and also how to bind your circle skirt. Personally, I prefer binding. But those two are the simplest. You can do a fold and double fold and hem and all that kind of stuff. But this, I think, is a nice, neat, simple process, especially if you've got the right presser feet. So this is the skirt that we'll be creating today, and hopefully you will grab your goodies and we can get started. So our satin has been placed right sides together, and along the fold we have positioned our pattern piece. And if you're going to be working with a larger hem, give yourself slightly larger seam allowance. Otherwise, if you're going to be doing a rolled hem or you're binding, you can run right along the edge. I'm going to give myself a little bit of wiggle room and cut that slightly larger, and I'll just cut this out now. And of course Sophie is playing in the background. Go, which gives us our full circle. And what we're going to do, because we will be hemming as we did on the A-line skirt yesterday, I'm going to just cut straight through down to the edge, so we now have a gap in our circle. So what we're going to be doing is hemming this together, leaving a gap so that it will fit over the hips of our doll, and we will be edging and sewing across as we did yesterday. That also then gives us the space to work on our waistband, we're going to be creating a slightly larger overlapping waistband today, which will give us room for a buttonhole. So we're building on the skills that we learned yesterday, as I said earlier. And what I'm going So this is, if I can get it in shot, what your rolled hem should look like. If you're having difficulties with your rolled hem, I'll now show you how you'd go around and bind. If you need extra information on how to use the binding foot, I have that on my YouTube channel, so I'll pop a link for you in the pattern page. And as we're on a circle, make sure that you are using bias binding, and make sure that you adjust as necessary every centimetre or so. And you should end up with beautifully bound edges. So I'll just continue on and show you what we have at the end. And here we have our bias bound skirt, and I have to say this is my favourite way, fastest way of binding a circular skirt. You'll be working with the bias, so just make sure that, as I said before, every couple of centimetres or every inch or so you are readjusting and realigning everything, and you end up with something in one stroke that is just beautifully bound and finished. So now what we're going to do is join the seam that we cut open, remembering to leave a gap. So before I start, I'm going to zigzag my raw edges so that will at least inhibit the fraying. side. And now what I'll do is sew the two edges together, and I want to make sure that the binding is even on both sides, so we've got a nice even, and then we have the even at the waistband as well. So we'll just sew that up, trying to remember, of course, not to leave it on zigzag, which I appear to be doing every single time I do this. So hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. So I shall just unpick that little bit. There we are. And then sew it with a straight stitch. And I'm going to start with a sewing spider because I don't want any clags to appear. All seems to be looking good at the moment. My sewing spider is actually quite clear of nastiness, but I'll just keep using it to be on the safe side. And then make sure everything is still aligned. Pin if you need to. As mine's just got caught on the feed there. There we go. And make sure that you're aligned at the top. Don't just focus on that edge. Once you've got your needle in, make sure that you're also aligned at the top. And then I'm going to come forward and reverse stitch. And we're going to stop about an inch away, maybe just a little bit more from the inner edge. And then we'll back stitch. There we go. I'll just tidy up all those loose ends and cut off the spider. And these loose ends can come away. And then what we're going to do is neaten up this open edge. We'll press everything open and then neaten up this edge as we did on the A-line skirt yesterday. Now what we're going to do over and above what we did yesterday is we're actually going to top stitch this in place. So I'm just going to clip those corners so they don't stick out underneath the bottom of the skirt. And we're now going to top stitch all the way down this edge now that we've pressed everything open and we've pressed the rest of that seam. I'm going to top stitch all the way from top to bottom, all the way top to bottom, and then I will put a strengthening section in there. So as I say, this might be a miniature skirt, but we are trying to keep it as professional looking as we can and work through the week to create slightly more professional finishes to everything. That doesn't mean you have to panic. It still doesn't mean you have to panic. But just try and focus on the techniques that you're learning. If you make a mistake, it's no biggie. Now what I'm going to do is run along that seam in the centre of my presser foot. And I'm going to move my needle across to the right. And I'm going to back tack for one stitch, just to secure things at the beginning, and then sew up. I've got to be very careful when I get to this edge. I'm not going to back tack at the top because we will have the waistband to secure that section. And so here we have our top stitch all the way along, and we're going to repeat that on the other side. I'm not going to have my needle in the right hand position. I shall put it back to centre, and then I shall work slightly off centre so that the everything aligns nicely. Again, we're going to back tack for one stitch. Make sure I fold is clear at the top. Okay. And now we have two nicely finished edges, and I'm just going to do a reverse for a few stitches to make sure that that has a little bit of extra strength. So I'll come down. That's slightly too close. There we go. I'm just going to do this manually because I don't want to go beyond the lines of stitching that I've just sewn. So the top stitching should be the edge of my horizontal line across. And I'll just go back one more, and that will be enough, just to give it that extra little bit of strength. There we go. And again, we'll tidy up those loose threads. And here we have our top stitching and our reinforcing. Where can we see that in focus? There we go. Top stitching, reinforcing, not quite in focus, but at least you can see it. So I'm going to move on to the waistband now, and I need to cut my waistband on the bias. So here we have our strip of fabric. It is cut on the bias, so it's got a lovely stretch to it. What I suggest is that you either cut one piece that is the full length that you're looking for, 11 inches I believe, by 2.5, or if you don't have that much fabric in one single piece, cut it in two and then seam them in the centre, and then go and do your pressing. Now what I've done, just to give me a guideline, hopefully you can see that, is I've pressed wrong sides together at the halfway mark, and I've also pressed and turned a seam allowance. This will be the right side, this will be the wrong side, or on the inside and the outside. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that my skirt is wrong side up, and I will pin the side which does not have the seam allowance ironed in place or pressed in place, and I will line those edges up, and I'll pin that right side to wrong side, which might sound bizarre, but it will work, I promise you, because what we'll be doing is folding it up and turning it over. So it will work out at the end of the day. It just seems a bit counterintuitive to be pinning right side to wrong side. If you have for some reason decided to, made a mistake or whatever, you have a waistband that is not on the bias, by all means try it. It will be a learning experience, because you will not get the curve that you need for this project. You need to have that stretch and give to be able to get the corners fitting smoothly. But if you need to learn by experience, then go for it, and just be prepared that you will need to unpick, and there will be a lot of frustration. But by all means, you learn the way you need to learn. So if you need to test everything, test away. I have no problems with that whatsoever. Grab some extra pins. Really, the pins are slightly more necessary for two reasons. One, I'm working with satin, which is very slippy, so it tends to like to go do its own thing. It doesn't stay where you expect it to stay. So pin, and then more pins, just to make sure that it's behaving itself. And also because we are on this tight circle, definitely need to make sure everything is going where I want it to go. And we've got the edge there. and I'm definitely going to be overlapping. I've got tons of excess and that's fine, but I'm overlapping on this side by about ½ inch, and I will be overlapping on this side as well. So what I'm going to do now is the amount of seam allowance that I've turned over on this side, I'm going to sew the matching seam allowance around this centre seam here. To make it easier, I've taken off the front plate so I can wrap the skirt around, and I'm just going to start off again with my sewing spider, making sure everything is centrally aligned for the needle and it's not zigzag or positioned off to one side. And now I can make a start. Pop everything around the arm. Should just fit. There we go. There's the needle. Pop this in. Set up the seam allowance, which I'm using as the width of my presser foot. And making sure that the edges, the top edges are still aligned. Off I go. By putting my pins in at direct right angles, I can sew over them without any fear of damaging my needle. However, where they've gone in at a slight angle, I will definitely need to take them out before I get to the presser foot. So this one I will have to remove. And be very careful of the pins as you are turning the skirt around the bottom of this arm. And already I can see where I've taken that pin out because it was at an angle. My fabric is starting to slide around a bit, but that's fine. It's under control. Just make sure everything stays aligned. This one's definitely going to have to come out. Making sure those edges are as I want them to be. We're just coming up to the end. So for this I will take that last pin out, double check everything is aligning. And this is quite fiddly because this is a very small skirt. It would be much easier on a full-sized skirt, but it's the same process. And then sew that through. Make sure everything's at right angles. There we go. Take out all my pins and cut off my loose threads. And now it's, yes, definitely starting to look more like a skirt. And what we're going to be doing is folding this way. So we're going to have right sides together, because what we're going to do is sew the end of our waistband in place. So I'll just move this back for a moment and I'll pop the deck back in. Now I'll explain what we're doing. We need to have somewhere to sew a buttonhole, and so what we're going to do is create that space right now, and we're going to fold on the line that we pressed earlier, and this will become the tab at the end of the waistband. So I'm going to give myself about an inch, inch and a half, and I'm going to sew along here for the end, and then I'm going to do the same on the other side, except this time I'm actually going to sew exactly where the waistband joins the skirt, so there won't be any excess fabric. It'll be right on that edge. So I'll just pop a pin in to keep everything in place, and we need to be going wrong sides out, so right sides together to align everything up. Dropped my pin, and there we go. So we'll just pop the pin in to keep that in place, and it's quite important, if you can possibly manage it, to get this pressed line that we're going to be using to mark our top stitch or as our hem in alignment with the line of stitches that we've just made. So let's just get that sewn, and I can show you what I'm actually waffling on about, and it might be easier for you to understand. So I'll just pop that on. We want it all to line up with the edge of the waistband, so it's very important that we actually start sewing from that waistband so we know that we're in perfect alignment. And then I will back tack once and sew all the way to the end, and back tack at the end, just so that that's secure, because we will be turning and putting quite a bit of pressure on it when we turn. So I'll just trim away that corner and show you what I mean by turning it. And literally we will take that, pop it round. I'm going to use my scissors very gently. If you have some sort of turning tool, then use that. Chopsticks are perfect. And we now have an edge. It still needs to be sewn to the rest of our waistband, but we now have this lovely edge, which shows up much nicer on this skirt, the fabric that I've chosen, than on yesterday's skirt fabric. And now we're going to do the same thing, although it's not aligned with the waistband edge of the skirt. So we'll just run a spider through, and then just on the inside of that pin at right angles, we'll run that through as well. There we go. So I can trim away all that. And we're very close to having a completed waistband. Now we're going to trim away the excess. Make sure you trim it on the right side. Trim that off, take the pin away, and again clip the corner. So it's a reducing bulk. Turn that out. Very naughty of me to use scissors, but as I say, chopstick would be perfect. And now we're going to turn everything the other way round to the front of the skirt. So everything needs to now turn, whether it wants to or not. And I'm going to press this to make sure that it prefers to turn, because it doesn't want to play at all. It keeps flipping back the other way. So I'll press this and I'll come back and so now that I've pressed it so that it actually wants to stand the correct way, I'm now going to go around and just clip into the waistband so that we can reduce a bit of bulk and make it easier to have everything laying down flat. Make sure you do not cut through your stitches, do not cut into the waistband fabric itself, and just notch like this all the way around the inside. Now we have all our notches cut in. We are simply going to flip the skirt waistband around and pin in place with our hem pressed under. So pin, again pin. This is probably the fiddliest part, or it feels the fiddliest part. If you need to pin at an angle, because that's the only way that you can make sure that you're getting these edges secure, then do so. Just make sure that you take out those pins when you're sewing. You cannot sew over pins that are at an angle. It can only be if they are perpendicular, at right angles to the sewing machine. They have to be at right angles going through like this. They can't be at funny old angles. Otherwise they will cause you all sorts of grief with your needle, and no one wants a broken needle pinging around the room. So we'll continue to pin like this, and we definitely need to make sure that we are covering the line of stitching that we created when we attached the first part of the waistband. So now that we have the skirt waistband pinned in place, what we're going to do is sew from the end where we don't have much wiggle room. We're going to top stitch all the way down, and if we need to adjust things, if we need to move things about, we've got the space to play at this end. So that's why we're finishing off here. Let's get started with our top stitching. Now this time, because the skirt is facing in completely the opposite direction, I'm not actually going to feed it round the arm. And I will be back tacking just the once to secure everything, and I will be taking my pins out as I go to avoid any needle problems. Just make sure not to sew your skirt in underneath. So now we have, unfortunately slightly wonky, a waistband, part with the tail so that we can actually put a buttonhole in, and as I say, unfortunately slightly wonky because it got caught up there, but the whole point of this is that it is a doll's skirt. It is not a human skirt, so we can make mistakes and learn from them. And I'm not going to pretend that I haven't made a mistake, because everyone makes mistakes. The only people who don't are those who can re-record and re-edit. But anyone that's watched my channel knows that I'm not about hiding mistakes. It's about showing mistakes and learning from them. So this is where I hadn't pinned properly, and it's slightly moved forward, which is why we've got that pulling effect. Whereas where I've got everything aligned nicely, I have a nice effect. However, I'm still going to show you how to finish this off and make a little buttonhole. So we'll be in my sewing machine. You'll obviously need to check your own. I will be using the 3 stitches here, and also the stitch length that is buttonhole. So I'll be using a combination of this and those 3 for my buttonhole creation. And I'm just going to make a small buttonhole because I only have a small button for a small skirt. There is a video that shows you how to go about making a buttonhole, and also how to sew the button on. So if you have watched my channel in the past, you may have seen that one. If not, then I'll run through it very quickly here so you can at least see the process, and then how I cut that. But I go into it in a lot more detail on the actual tutorial. But I've gone in the middle. I'm going to be going horizontally rather than vertically, and let's get started. You simply decide how long you want your buttonhole to be, move to the end position, and then come back up. Right, so we've now sewn our buttonhole, and mine is looking a little bit manky because I've for some reason had to sew it 5 times today. But again, I'm telling you the truth because not everything works perfectly the first time, and as you can see, lots of unpicking later, I now have my my buttonhole. If you want to see the whole process smoothly, there is a tutorial on it, but this is the last step, which is how to actually cut it without cutting through all of the work that you've just done. And so I pop a pin across the top and I pop a pin across the bottom where I no longer want to be able to go with my seam ripper, and then I insert the seam ripper. I'm very careful not to stab my own fingers, and then run up the middle, and it will stop when I hit the pin. Turn it around, insert the seam ripper one more time and run along towards the other pin. Can't go any further, and that gives me my buttonhole. A long and painful process for me today. Hopefully it'll be a much smoother and simple process for you to put your buttonholes in. Please let me know how long it took you, how many attempts it took you, and hopefully you'll all manage it on the first try and not go for a world record of 5 like I went for today. So that's why it's in a slightly strange position and not as close to the edge as I would have preferred it to be, but nonetheless it will work. It is a buttonhole, and that's the last piece of the dress. So I shall pop a button on and show you the lovely doll wearing her new skirt. And here we have our finished skirt, which you saw in the intro. And we're all done, all made, and her hair's looking a bit messy today, which is a shame. But we are now 2 skirts into our 5 skirt challenge. Let me know what you found was easy. Let me know which hem method you decided to go with for this skirt, and let me know how many attempts it took you to do your buttonhole. If you can beat my 5, that is pretty amazing, but hopefully you haven't done that and it's all worked out quite swimmingly and you got there on your first attempt. But I'll be doing a live Q&A session at lunchtime today, so that'll be 12:30 on Tuesday, the 6th of December, and I will see you later on. And keep an eye out for tomorrow morning's pattern, which will be the ruffle skirt. So I'll see you later. Bye for now.